any title search, her own deed says that, which is right here.
Okay, my question. Yeah.
Here's her deed, real quick, just to show you,
Mm-hmm.
and, it's a plat by Thomas Rives, compiled in 1904, so it was recorded in 1904 as well.
Okay.
That's your deed,
Is it,
that's your property, yes, ma'am. There's a title search that, Stephanie done
is that
previously.
deed you got?
You're welcome to have a copy.
Here's the question I have. If this was done in 1904,
Yes, sir.
then this should have been owned by the town of Blackstone, right?
I think it is owned by the town.
Okay, but now, if it was done in 1904,
Uh-huh.
then this should be owned by Blackstone.
Correct.
And this should have been relative to 1904, not relative to now, but 1904.
Yes, sir.
That should have been a parcel there, and it should have been a parcel here.
It's more than
not-
that. It's
not-
multiple parcels. Yeah, if you look at it, and we can pull the subdivision plat, but she owns a lot of properties. You can see she owns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on that side of the road, and 63C, 64, and 69 on that side of the road. So she owns multiple parcels, that's correct. I'm sorry, I got
Alright, Tony, go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Okay, okay.
It's, 5:04.
I'll make you a copy of it. Thank you.
I got, okay. I didn't bring mine up here, but my deed is not just like the one she searched. I got papers too, but they gave me what I want to have, and it's got, it better be just like that, or somebody done altered something. Right?
Alright, so the first thing on the agenda is the Powell
Paul
Street.
Street.
And where are we?
Alright. And I'm gonna give everybody a history, so a history lesson as best I can. In 2000, I believe in 16, the town council rezoned a parcel of property owned by Frankie Williams. And he bought it from Miss Hardaway, if you're familiar with it. It's over on Lester Street. And it's basically the vacant field, which runs from the tree line pretty close to where her driveway is, all the way back to Miss Hardaway's property. And Frankie has planted a row of cedar trees, or Leland cypress trees, dividing what he purchased from Miss Hardaway from what she kept. In doing so, Frankie came to me after he purchased the property, and Frankie said, I see where the sewer is, but I don't think the entire property will flow by gravity to the manhole on Lester Street. There is gravity sewer adjacent to his property in the center of Lester Street that stops about where Michael Varner lives, if you guys know where that's at. Second or third house down from Birch. There's a manhole right in the middle of the street. But the depth of that manhole will allow Frankie to develop probably 2/3 or 60% of his property closer to Miss Hardaway, but that portion of the property which is down towards Miss Williams in that corner there will not flow by gravity into that depth of that manhole. So I said, well, tell me what you want to do here, big guy. So he came back to me with 2 concept plans. Actually, this is the same drawing. But he came up with 2 routes to put the sewer in. The first one would have traversed both Vera Lee Trent and Miss Williams, okay? Both of them. And going across private property to a gravity sewer line in East Street. You know where East Street is? Okay, by the school. Frankie had these drawn up and they were done in, let me see what the date is. This is showing April 2018 on the date, okay? So he provided those to me. Chessie ran a title search for the Trent property and for Andy Williams' property, which we had in the file to make sure that we were communicating with the correct property owners. I spoke with Miss Trent and Miss Williams, and Miss Trent was not agreeable to having a sewer line across her property. So that kind of killed it. I spoke with Miss Williams, and I think there were some terms and conditions that were expressed to me that could make it work, but nothing was ever signed. No agreement was ever inked, simply because it was a moot point when Miss Trent said she wasn't interested, so there was no other. So Frankie said, what else can I do? And I said, well, take a look at Powell Street to see if it'll work, okay? See if you can run a sewer line down Powell Street and see if it'll work. Jennifer reminded me, and we looked it up, and the minutes show that we had reported to council before you guys were here, but with the old council in May of 18, that Frankie was gonna take a look at Powell Street. But then I heard nothing from Frankie for a long time, a very long time. In fact, I talked to Frankie probably around Christmas time, and he said he was kind of shelving everything for right now because he just didn't have the money to do it. Okay? So, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, thereabouts, Frankie's surveyor showed up on the property and started surveying Powell Street. That's a mistake. We should have let you know. He should have let me know that his surveyors were coming, but nonetheless, surveyors show up, ribbons show up, Staub show up. People are concerned what's going on. So I went out there, and I didn't even think it was Frankie because the church has just been sold, this Assembly of God church. If you notice, there's some new surveying around there, and that's what I thought it was. But I called Frankie and I said, by any chance, is this your guy? He said, yeah, it's my surveyor out here. Okay. They surveyed it, and what it is an undeveloped portion of Powell Street. Powell Street was first platted and recorded in 1904. And Tessie can give you the history and all the, the rules and court hearings and all those kind of findings and that sort of thing. But Powell Street is an undeveloped portion, or an undeveloped portion of Powell Street. There is a developed portion which runs between Rutherford and the primary school. And it runs in a straight orientation. You know that paved street that runs from Jackson? You know where the after-school Christian education building is? And that goes straight all the way down through there, and it runs all the way to West Entrance Road.
Okay.
The only part that is paved in the state system that we receive reimbursement on is between Jackson Street and Birch Street. The other part has just sat for 114 years, 115 years. Okay. We did find, and I do have the original subdivision plat here in the town hall. It is in our old plat book, and sure enough, we found that right. And it was recorded in 1904. Okay. It is the same survey that is referenced in Annie's deed. So I think we're all on the same sheet of music as far as the meets and bounds and the description and all that sort of thing. Well, in the meantime, Frankie has gone out and he came back to me and he said, the sewer line will work. He said, gravity flow will work from the corner of his property back to West Entrance Road. And so I said, well, Frankie, you certainly got to have council approve all this. This is an easement. This is a granting of a license to use this. So council has to, but he knew that a year ago, okay? The council would have to approve it. But it does work. In the meantime, looking at what Frankie provided, the town didn't do this survey. This was done by Maxie Hines and Associates up in Farmville, and they did it on Frankie's nickel. He paid them to do this, okay? But what he's provided me gives me two questions, one of which is a Barbara L. Jones, who I think is Ann's sister. Her home here is shown crossing over the property line onto Powell Street. Okay. I don't know how it happened. I don't know the history behind it, but I can tell you it's not unusual. We had one, if you remember, over on 3rd Street. We built a house for somebody in one of these grant programs, tore the old one down, built a new house right on the same footprint, and the neighbor called me and said, you built a house on me. I said, no, we put it right back where it was. Did the survey, and sure enough, it had been across the property line, and we put it back on the property line.
So what has to happen?
We bought those 2 lots from that gentleman next door and gave them to the property owner.
So what has to happen with Miss Jones's property?
Here's what I think, the 2 things. This is, in my opinion, Tessie will tell you her findings, and she and I haven't spoken since last week, so I don't know if anything's changed since you and I last spoke. Powell Street is a fee simple street. It's owned by somebody, and it divides Ann Williams' properties from one side to the other. If you look at the subdivision plan, it shows that. The 2 things that I have concerns about, one, with Ms. Jones's house being across the line, I think it creates a blemish on title for Ms. Jones. If this is accurate, it creates blemish. The second thing is, and I noticed in Ann's title search in the description, they must have assumed that this is a public street because she was not granted a right-of-way across it if it's owned privately. If it's owned by the Powell family or another entity other than the town, her deed did not grant easement across someone else's property. So it's my belief that the assumption was when Ann bought her property from the Powells, is that who you bought it from, the Powell family? That the assumption was it was a public street. And she could use a public street without any problem. So again, I think the opinion is that it's a publicly held strip of property, okay? Tessie's I'll let her, turn her loose and let her do her thing, and then I'll give you what I think can be a workable solution for everybody. Okay.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So, What I had to do is research what was the state of the law when this plat was done and recorded in 1912.
1904.
1904, yes. Okay. This case I have is citing from, anyway, 1904. So what I found, I looked back at the Virginia Code, and the plat in the case that I found is from 1912. That was my confusion. And what it talks about is the Plat Act that was codified in Virginia Code of 1904, and it was enacted in 1897. And essentially what it cites to in this court case, it says that the acknowledgement and recording of such plat shall operate to create a public easement or right of passage over such portion of the premises platted as is on such plat set apart for streets or other public use, and shall be equivalent to a deed in fee simple to such portion thereof as is therein dedicated to charitable, religious, or educational purposes. So basically what it says is that if you have recorded the plat and acknowledged it, which I'll get to that in a second, then essentially it becomes a street. The only question I have, which I think is answered in here when it says shall be equivalent to a deed in fee simple, because I said, well, you know, what this is it's basically a street. And so I wanted to be sure that it was not just an easement that's recorded, but actually, you know, the property in fee simple. And so that was the one question that I had, but I believe that what this is saying is if the plat is recorded, that essentially at that point it vests some sort of title in the property to the town. And so what the town would have to do, because see the problem that we have is if this is not a street, then technically it's still owned by the original Powell family wherever they are, and they intended it to be, you know, vested to the town with the plat. So the one thing that we could not find is where the town had acknowledged the plat. So there was never that formal acknowledgement, but there was the plat, and the plat was recorded. So, yeah.
You said it wasn't a plat, but then it is a plat.
No, that's not what I said. It's a plat that was recorded at the courthouse. So, in summary, it's very confusing, but basically what it says is the state of the law as it was when the plat was drawn and recorded is that essentially the recordation of the plat and the acknowledgement by the town of the road would be enough to vest title to the property in the town, if that makes sense.
No.
So, okay, well, and it's very confusing. It took me a while to even wrap my head around it. So basically, okay, with real estate law, when you sell properties, usually you have to have a deed. Or, you know, if you're conveying an easement, like a road easement or something like that, usually there has to be some sort of deed in order for anybody to own property. But the subdivision ordinance that is in the code, and it's been modified several times since obviously this code was recorded in 1904, it basically creates an exception to the deed requirement. So what it says is, so long as you have a plat, like a drawing. So for example, when Blackstone was originally drawn out and done by the developer. The developer did not have to, write a deed to the town of every single road in the town. Because that drawing and taking it to the courthouse and recording it was enough to tell the town, these are your roads, you own it.
I'll give you an example. You guys, since you've been on council, we've done some street vacations and alley vacations. Alley vacations are fairly common, especially over in the West Blackstone Plat, 4th Street, 6th Street, 7th Street, Lunenburg, that neighborhood. That's an old subdivision. That's probably the oldest, one of the oldest subdivisions in town, and it's in the 1890s when that one was recorded. Okay? And if you remember, the town is doing the abandonment or the vacation of each of these alleys. So there's an assumption that the town owns these streets and alleys on Lunenburg and all these other places. And that one even predates this one. I have the survey that was recorded in 1904 here in the book, and of course I couldn't get the book open, so I drug the whole thing in here. Do you want to come up here and look at it? And I always wondered why we kept these old plats, but now I know why we keep these old plats. This is the plat that was done in 1904 and recorded in deed book 17, page 550. Okay? And this is the one that her plat described from Mr. Rives. And then you can see Powell Street is clearly platted out, West Entrance Road here. Birch Street was not in existence at the time. You can see where Jackson Street is. Birch Street, approximately here, okay? And I could give you a better description, but I think it says Birch Street right there. But Birch Street runs all the way to Powell, right there at the corner in front of the primary school. This is the remainder of Powell Street that was platted, again, in 1904. And it's the same survey that Ms. Williams' deed references as this one. Okay. And I think Annie, if we looked at her, I think she owns these lots in here and these lots on this side of series. You
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, so what
You see how
happened,
they're separated by Powell Street? And
Yeah.
she owns several of these lots, 5 or 6, 7 of them.
Okay, I got a question.
Uh-huh.
When she paid taxes on her property,
Yes, sir.
is Powell Street exempted from her taxes?
Yes, it should be, absolutely.
if you look at can I see the title search that has the description of it?
Yeah, I don't know what to do with it.
Okay.
Hey, this is the title search that Tessie did this when we first started looking at the sewer lines. 715 Lester Street, that's her address over there. And then
So,
here's Tessie's
yeah,
findings, but here's the description.
this was what was copied from the deed. And so what it references is, it references the actual lots that are on that plan. So, it says lots number 66, 67, 27, 28, 43, 44, 45. And so those are actually the lot numbers that are described, on that plan. And so what it doesn't do, with the deed description is it doesn't, convey, it just conveys the lots that are drawn.
Yeah,
for
Powell
it.
Street wasn't conveyed to her. And the concern I have is an easement, if the town does not own it or publicly hold it, and it's still retained maybe by the Powell estate or whoever, that there wasn't an easement granted across it.
Well, how much, okay, how much pipe are you talking about? You talking about how much,
How big of a pipe?
how big of a pipe are you talking about?
8 inches? 8?
Yeah, it's small. But,
Now, I still have a question.
8 SS, 8 sanitary sewer.
I'm still looking for the document that shows that it was recorded. Where is the recording? This is it right here?
Well, Annie's deed is the document that you need. It says.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying,
That's what was recorded. That's at the courthouse, same drawing.
now, we went to the courthouse, we could not find this.
Deed
Now-
book 17, 550.
In book 17 on page 550, all it says is, look in the file cabinet number 1.
It'll send you back to Plaque Avenue.
Right, that's all it says. That page, it's a handwritten note that says that.
Did you go back to the plat book?
That's right, and in the plat book, all it has is a map.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
all.
that's what you're looking at.
That's all, that's what we're looking for, because in 1904, there wasn't an express deed to the town. The act of subdivision, or the act of recording the plat, is what Tessa's saying, that sufficed for the transfer of the property to the town for public use.
But I mean, I see what you have here, but when Ms. Williams bought that land, she bought that land based on a plat that was surveyed like this, and it had some of those, things on it. But when she pays her taxes based on all of this land around here.
That's not true. She doesn't pay for Powell Street. She pays on the private lots. But Powell Street is not part of her deed, and she doesn't pay on that strip of land right there. Nobody does. It's tax exempt, nobody pays on that Powell Street side.
I still don't see though, how you have proven with a preponderance of this evidence that Blackstone owned the street. I see this plaque, but this plaque was drawn up as a idea or something that was gonna be done. And who says that Blackstone followed through with the ownership of Powell Street? Cause I don't see where there is anything that says Blackstone owns Powell Street.
Did you listen to Tessie though?
I listened what Tessie said.
That's-
Now, this is what
that's what
Tessie
it said.
said. I wanna see this in writing. I mean, I'm not doubting you.
No, I'll be glad to put it, you know, in writing.
No.
Daddy, where's that
I
other
want to
sheet?
see the law.
Where's the
I
other
want to see
sheet?
the book that it
Yeah,
came
yeah,
out of.
She
Daddy,
just read it to me.
Daddy, where's the other sheet that I got from the courthouse that references Powell Street?
If it's not here,
It references, but it doesn't say anything about the town or anybody owning it.
my
And it
whole-
goes
my whole
back
thing
to
with the whole
1904.
idea is that they told me before I bought it, I came right in the same place here and asked about that Powell Street. They told me it was undeveloped and it would not be opened unless the landowners opened it, which would be me and my sister Barbara and Miss Holloway, I guess, would be the only people that could own it. And if I sold some to somebody, they would need a way out, and I would have to give them a way out. But other
I
than
think
that,
Powell
I
Street
would not have
serves-
to open that street. Now, I was told that, why would I buy land with a main street running down through the middle of it?
I don't know, but you
I
did.
came right here and asked them, and they told me that.
Is there any truth to that, Philip?
Huh?
Is there any truth to what she's saying?
That's what
You
they
don't
say.
think
I'm
so?
a
You
witness
calling
to
me a
that.
liar?
I'm a witness because I was in the
You
middle
calling
of
me a
it.
liar? Some,
What you said was that the town said it cannot
I
be
didn't say
open
the town, I said I came here to this,
to the council, right?
no, I didn't come to the council.
Oh, who'd you come to?
The town manager,
Larry. And he said it couldn't be open.
unless I opened it.
I agree, private property owners, but by act of council is how you open it, not because individuals want to open it. They have to petition to the town council so that the
Well, my
road can be
question is,
accepted into the city.
If the land was purchased from Ms. Hardaway, and they asked to go across her land for these proposed apartments, and she said
Well,
no.
she didn't say no, it's Trent that said no.
Ms.
But
Trent
see-
said no.
But see, Philip, when you came out to my house and asked me,
Yes, ma'am.
you told me that Trent said you could come across.
She would not permit it. Ms.
When
Trent was
you
okay,
came to
but
my
Joe
house,
said no.
you remember when you came out there, me and
I
my
do
sister was in
remember.
that yard? You told me Trent had given you permission.
She never gave me permission. In fact, they,
Well, why'd you tell me that lie? See, that's what I told you about you changing faces on me,
okay.
you know?
No,
Well, see,
You try to use that cheap psychology to tell me one person said something.
in her front yard. I mean, it's going right across her sidewalk. And if you have a problem with the sewage line and you have to go in and replace it, how many times you gonna turn up her property to replace the line?
hopefully,
I mean, there's like no other way to go into to make these apartments. I mean, to me, it's easier to go from
No,
the
there-
primary school to where you're building apartments than to go from West Entrance Road slam through her yard to do it.
here's the
And
situation.
where's the down
Hang on.
flow?
It's not a matter of whether they can get to the sewer. They can get to the sewer. Ain't no problem. You can go to Leicester Street and get the sewer. But to flow it by gravity, this is the solution. He's got an option. He can build a pump station tomorrow. He can build a
I
pump
mean, so
station.
why are we so concerned about saving him money?
I'm not. Pump station is much more expensive. But the town typically owns pump stations. You're saving the town money. I look out for the town.
Listen,
We
sir,
don't
that's
need.
why I
hold
don't
on, let
live
me
in the
finish.
town.
Please, I beg of you, let me finish. It's really important.
Okay.
The alternative to putting gravity sewer in, which is in the town's best interest and his best interest, You may not think it's in your best interest, and I get that. But the alternative to it, and the whole reason we wanna even go through any of this is the alternative is a sewage pump station. And a sewage pump station has two options. Either it's dedicated to the town for us to maintain it, and we don't want another pump station, we've got gracious plenty of. But he's entitled to build a private pump station, okay? He's entitled to do that. And if he builds that, yes, it's more expensive, but it sits in your front yard, and that's no good, you don't want that, I promise you. It's no lie.
No, you don't want him.
You don't
Now,
want
I'm gonna tell you this. You do not want him to build a private pump station because I'm gonna tell you why. If that private pump station goes out tonight, now I'm not taking, y'all know me. I'm not gonna take up for him. But what I'm saying is, boo, if he builds his own private pump station and that pump station goes out tonight, the town in itself can't say, okay, you got a pump station out there, you got to get it up. He can say, well, 2 days from now.
He's gotta deal with DEQ.
Right.
Which is the state.
See.
It's not a good situation. Will he do it? I don't know, but he's entitled. He doesn't even have to ask these guys.
He's entitled to put it, you said the street belongs to the town.
No.
Well,
No, we're talking about a different.
We're talking about a pump station
No,
now.
no. But where would he put it? On Powell
No,
Street,
on
right?
his property.
It's on his
Go
property.
the
Where did he
opposite
put it on
direction.
his property? I could care less.
Yeah, but see, you got to worry about the stink.
It's in your front yard.
It's in your front yard now.
In your front yard.
That's the Powell Street state.
It would be in the lowest part of it because it would all flow by gravity to the lowest place.
Yeah.
And then he could pump it out to Lester Street. He can do that tomorrow. But I'm telling you, the town doesn't want it because we don't want to spend the money. I promise you, I'm not trying to.
You don't want that.
Anything like that.
You don't want that, boo.
That pump station is no good. We've got them and they overflow and they stink, okay? Because it's a big pit of raw sewage and it works just like the back of a toilet. It's got a float in it. And when enough sewage gets in there, it'll pop it and the pumps will kick on and then it pumps. But if it rains a bunch and there's a lot of water gets in it, man, our pump station at Forest Drive, you'll overflow. And I'm just telling you, that's not in anybody's best interest. The town, yours, Frankie's, that's the worst of all solutions.
But you're talking about 30 apartments.
77.
77.
Okay, but my thing is, do you know how short of a time it's
77
gonna take to fill that up?
And that's why I'm saying, that's why you don't want him to build it and he be responsible
No,
for it.
I understand exactly what all of you're saying, but my issue is, if something happens to this and you have to go in and tear it up to find whatever the problem is. I mean, the EPA with this isn't good living for anybody.
Right.
Whether he put a pump station there or you run a sewer line straight through her yard. Neither one of them is beneficial to anybody.
Right.
But here's what.
But we're just saying you don't want him to build his own pump station.
Here's some solutions, all right?
That's
Here's
what I'm
solutions, okay? If this survey is correct, and I assume it is, I'm assuming it is. I didn't ask the surveyor to do it. This was done by Frankie and hand delivered to me. If we do this, I think the solution is to fix this, all of these issues. If a sewer line goes in, there's sewer lines all over town, there really are, okay? They don't typically overflow at the manhole or in the line, they overflow at the pump station. That's where all the collection is. Is it possible it could back up? It's a possibility it could one day back up. But what I would propose to council is, so there is benefit to everybody, okay? I know Annie's still on a drain field, and Ms. Jones is not on the town sewer either. She's on a drain field of sorts, I don't know, nobody lives there, so, but she doesn't pay a sewer bill, okay? She's got a water meter and a water account, but she does not have a sewer account. What I would propose is, if the sewer goes in, retain a 20-foot easement, and then vacate Powell Street, at least that section up to this corner, vacate that section of Powell Street, so then you own what is now Powell Street, because you're both sides. There would be a sewer line there, but vacate it. That cleans up Ms. Jones' problem. In the meantime, what I believe, to try to make the situation work, because you're both on drain fields, that when the sewer line gets put in at no cost to you, we provide you with a sewer connection. Okay?
Then they pay sewage from then on.
If they choose to hook on, it's not mandatory, but if your drain field ever goes pluey on you, again,
I just put it
you can just tie in. And I would suggest to council, we would waive the tap fees and all that kind of stuff. All you would have to do is have a plumber plug it in. And same thing with Ms. Jones. And then the depth of the sewer needs to be constructed to make sure that your home and Ms. Jones's home will both flow by gravity into that line. Okay, what we don't wanna do is put a connection there and then find out it's too high or not accepting, the flow. But I would vacate the property back to the property owner, and Annie would be the
But a
predominant.
20-foot easement would
A
go in
20-foot
place
easement
to
retain.
cover
That's
the.
what we keep typically.
Okay, now, I hear all that you're saying, and that's good, but I wanna go back to this plat right here, okay?
Okay.
Now, I see what you have here.
Mhm.
Right, and it's recorded in Nottaway.
It is.
Okay, now, my question is, where did Blackstone obtain ownership of this property other than what she says, that if you record a plat, that can be substituted for a deed? That's what you just said, okay?
Mhm.
Now, I'm saying that, you don't have a deed to this, you only have this drawing right here.
Correct.
Now, all these different subdivisions you have in here marked off,
Right.
at the time that this was drawn up,
Mhm.
I don't think none of that stuff was there.
Oh, probably in the farm. on
Right.
the field or something.
Exactly.
So,
So my point is that I don't know where Blackstone really obtained ownership. I'm thinking that this is an idea that somebody had back in 1904 that they were gonna do, and they made them record the plat.
Yes,
But I don't believe that Blackstone obtained ownership of that property. I don't believe it, because they never developed it, they never put nothing into it, and I'm saying that this is a idea, because this stuff was not here. This is an idea that was never developed. It was never developed. And so my thing is, show me where Blackstone has ownership. I see all your new documents, I see your new surveys, and I heard what she said. But I still don't see where Blackstone obtained ownership.
we can't produce something that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All that exists is the survey and the state code that
Okay.
says that is satisfactory for the.
Okay, now, we wanna go through the state code and see it, not what you type. I wanna see the original state code myself.
Now, keep in mind one thing, if this does not belong to the town, okay, and say your assertions are right, and they may be,
Okay?
Annie does not have a right of way across Powell Street to
Whoa.
get in there.
But hold it now, if it does not
Uh-huh.
be owned by Blackstone, then Mr. Powell and them live there, and ownership is what?
Ownership is what, I don't know. What do you think?
If you got ownership, it's 9/10 of the law.
I don't know.
And so right now, Ms. Williams owns that property because she's the one that maintains it and keeps it up, and she's been doing it for 15-some years. Well, actually 19 years. And so when we were purchasing that property, as she said, we inquired with the town of Blackstone because we was concerned about Powell Street. And we were told that the only way it could be opened up is from the landowner, which was her. Now, you was not here, and none of us was here in
1904.
1904, nobody in this room. So we really don't know whether Blackstone really pursued this other than recording the deed. I mean, this plaque. Only thing you got is a plaque that was recorded. You got no documentation how they acquired the land or nothing, or even when they acquired the land. You only have a plaque that was recorded.
What was required in 1904, so.
No,
Yeah,
you,
but I mean, from 1904 to 2018 or 2000 when she purchased it, if it belonged to Blackstone, there should have been something along the way recorded somewhere besides a plaque from 1904 saying that Blackstone owns
That's
it.
all it is. If you go to the West Blackstone plaque, which is the predominance of that kind of south near ViewMac, that neighborhood, that's all it is. If you look at the deed back there, they reference that 1898 plaque.
right, but now keep in mind now, this is a thought, an idea, because none of this was developed. This was nothing but open land back then, and somebody said, this is what we're going to do.
They did it because Annie bought it, based on that plaque. Her property is based on that plaque.
Does
That's the
the
description of
deed,
what
does the
she bought.
deed say anything about Powell Street?
It does. Then let me see that sheet.
This is the description A from her deed right here. You wanna look at it?
I got it from another way. I got the deed that belonged to the Powells and the deed that belongs to Annie. And it references
Mr.
Powell
Powell still
Street.
living or what?
I think this is the same as what you got there. Yeah, read it right there. And then compiled by Rise and Brothers March 22nd, and
19.
recorded
Who
in
are the
1904. So this
Are
is
they
the
living?
plat that
I
they're
don't
referencing,
I
and
don't,
they say
I
that
don't,
Annie
I
owns
don't think it's,
lot 66.
if there's any people of that,
Okay.
there are some pals here, Blacktown, but whether that's,
Who are the
that's
pals?
them or not, I don't know.
Who are the Powers? Are they living?
Did she own some, I
That's
guess she
right.
bought up there on Lester Street?
It-
Or on the other side, where,
On West,
is
it
that where her
touches
son
West
lives?
Entrance Road.
Is that where her son
No,
lives?
No, that's West
no,
Entrance.
no, listen now. Lot 6 is on the other side of Leicester Street. All the way on the other side.
No, that is, it's that piece up there by the church that touches West Entrance Road.
Not according to this drawing, we going by the drawing. It's on the other side of the church and the road over there. You know where those apartments is people live? It's over on that side of Leicester Street. Now she owns property over there.
27?
Are the Powers living or what?
Mr. Palmer's not, I don't know if his wife is still living there.
23?
Ridge
Are the
Road.
Powers still living?
4,
Pals.
45, 46.
The original owners.
The original owners, are they still living?
Mr. Powell is not.
64,
What about his
65,
wife?
She was out on,
66,
she was out on,
67.
is it Ridge Road?
And the south half
The
of
one that goes out
29,
off of
and
46.
the north half of 63, and the south
That's the
half
dude
of
who used to-
69.
That
That's the guy that used to work at JB's.
Driveway comes up.
Yeah, well,
At JB's store.
Driveway.
I don't know, Mr. Powell's old.
Yeah, but you remember when JB had that store over there?
His daughter is Jackie Dalton, you know Jackie Dalton?
Where is it, Daddy?
First Street, this is a different piece of property. This is, First Street, I think is what they call Church Street.
And there's some more, she's a grub now, she used to.
Is this the Powell's?
Walmart.
Street or is her?
This is Van-
Joyce.
this is the
That's
house.
one, that's a daughter.
Joyce Grubb.
It's somebody's daughter, I don't know what it is.
You know Joyce that works at Walmart.
It says,
This is a
Yeah.
different piece of property.
Okay.
First Street, I don't think it's over here. First Street, I think is what they used to call Church Street, or what Church Street is called now.
Look at the back of that thing. Look at the back of that, the signature's on the back.
oh, that is in here, hold on a second.
Yeah, I don't think there's a First Street over here.
It said where the street
Wait a minute,
intersects
maybe
with
this is
the
it.
others are down.
See, they got it scratched out where it says First. Maybe that's what they're talking about. Which is now Lester Street, by the way. That would make more sense.
Beginning of the point, yeah, on the eastern line of First Street,
Uh-huh.
where the said street line intersects the southern boundary of the property of L.A. Wilson, fence along said Wilson east, a distance of 217 feet.
I don't know where Wilson's property is. I think that's all correct. You see it right there. I just don't know where the Wilson's property or the southern boundary of Wilson. You see it? L.A. Wilson. Anybody remember L.A. Wilson?
Wait a minute, that's parcel 1 and parcel 2.
That's right.
I think Annie owns some property across from her property.
She may. Yeah,
Okay.
It may very well be.
Right, that's what that is.
Okay.
That's what
And I'm thinking First Street was the previous name of Church Street, but you can see right here on here, somebody scratched that out. And maybe that they're talking about this Lester Street piece. That would make more sense. I don't know why it's scratched out.
Well, the only thing, and I don't know, I mean, I'm not I don't know this
It's-
kind of law or anything else,
It's
but if
the-
the
it's the
deed
bottom
says Powell Street,
Hold on, Daddy, it says
Then that
grantor
would-
does further
I would
convey.
believe then whatever plat was recorded, if it has Powell Street in it, and the deed says Powell Street, then Powell Street exists.
This is what it says, grantor does further convey all of his right, title, and interest, if any, into Powell Street as shown in the plat recorded in deed book 17, page
There
550.
you go.
Of any, if any. I do think that may, if
He's
any, I think it may solve the problem about going across Powell Street for the easement.
Yeah,
It's-
but
it's
nobody
really-
can show me,
You know, I don't have anything I can
Anything-
produce something that just doesn't exist.
and this is in her deed,
Uh-huh.
the bottom line of it, the very bottom line of her deed. And if you have the same thing, it should be on your
It's
paperwork.
shown on the plat recorded in this is the plat that's recorded in 17,550.
Yeah, on Mr. Powers' deed, Is there anything referenced in Powell Street?
I haven't, no.
Mm. But that doesn't, that description is only for this section. It doesn't have this section. It may be a deed having parcel 1 on there. This is just showing the same as parcel 2.
Right, we need parcel 1. Parcel 1.
It may be a different deed where the Powell got it or something like that, I don't know. But,
Mr. Powell, it was given.
Well,
Mhm.
well, look,
Miss Powell, Miss Ida Powell left that land to her son. Now, that's where he got it from. I don't know where she got it from. Miss Ida.
no, I think there's a good chain of custody, and I think Chelsea's even gone back and looked at the title search. Oh, seriously, I'm telling you the truth now. She's gone back and looked at the thing, and there's a good title.
Did she see
Look
where
at
Ida
the
Powell
testing.
gave it to her son?
What she owns. Those lots
Right.
are very, very plain.
well,
You can count them off of here and tick them off this list.
right. My only thing is this,
We're not gonna
I
be able
see
to
your
get
plan.
anything done today.
and, we're gonna deal with the code that says that all you need is a plan.
You might as well let
And
them
that can
know.
take the place of a deed. Now, if that's true,
Mhm.
then our only concern is this. Okay, we need to deal with Powell Street and Blackstone and get this straightened out and add out.
Sure.
Okay, so now, if you all are saying that you will let the landowner own that property again and have an easement to go in there.
She
then-
wouldn't even need an easement because she would own the land.
I know, but you all would need an easement to
For
go
the
across
sewer.
it.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly,
Frankie,
okay?
yeah.
Now, in doing so, we don't want the sewer line up on her step. We want it as far as we can, that you can put it away from her house.
If you look at the right-of-way width here, it's 30 feet. Okay, Powell Street is a 30-foot right-of-way. And you can see her house being here, the sewer line should be 10 feet off that property line, off that side, and 20 feet off of her. Okay? So it is already designed to be as farther away from her house.
I mean, but
and
that's where
farther
he
to-
has those pink ribbons.
That's the street. No, those
You
those are the
don't worry about the
boundaries of
ribbon.
street. Yeah.
Once we agree in here, those ribbons can be moved, so we ain't worrying about that.
Yeah.
We just worrying about coming to an agreement where everybody can agree on, and we can move on this project, one way or the other.
Yes, sir.
One thought I had, and I don't know anything about, the mechanics of sewage, so if I'm wrong, just tell me I'm wrong. But if the town were to vacate that and we reach some sort of agreement, could the easement be even further away from Mrs. Williams' house?
If she wanted to grant the
if she
easement,
agreed to
hell, he
it?
could build a sewer line over here.
Yeah, to make it as far away from her
Even
house.
farther from her
as
house. If she would
possible.
grant it, then that would get it even farther from your house.
Right.
Yeah.
You own the property.
Okay, well, look,
That could happen. That's a good idea.
if they grant you Powell Street to go across your land, and you give them an easement away from your house, further away, is that agreeable?
We can get it 40 feet or 50 feet or however far we can get it in there. It may require Frankie to
I
put
mean,
some
because
extra
see, right
maintenance.
there, the where they have it, it's gonna take down her hedges, her
Yeah,
sidewalk.
we can move it.
Right.
Chelsea's exactly
All
right.
right, so look, can we all come to an agreement now to say, if you all grant her Powell Street,
Mhm.
okay? She give you an easement that we all can live with now, away from her house.
Absolutely.
We can settle this issue, and when she decide to hook to it, that.
We waive the
she-
fees.
We waive the fees and everything,
And we'll build the
Right.
connection so they don't even have to dig into it.
okay?
Now, we can't approve that right now. We
I know.
can make that recommendation to
Exactly.
council, but I support
Right.
that.
I'll
I think
support
it's
it.
reasonable.
I'll
By
support it.
getting it back,
I'll make a motion.
I don't know if Jones ain't here, but it solves that potential that her house is on that.
Exactly.
And that would go away. She would own, because by the act of vacation, what the town is doing is a quick claim. We're saying we don't have anything, and by state code, half goes to each of the adjoining property owners.
But
Okay?
she owns
Okay.
both
So that
sides.
portion that runs against Barbara, she would get,
Right,
okay? Annie would get anything that butts her, and I think the only other place they're showing is this little tiny wedge, which really isn't a factor whatsoever.
right. This is the church property here,
That's
I
right,
think,
that's right.
okay, right here. And Annie's property come all the way down to here.
That's exactly right.
Right.
So she would get 15 feet on that side, Barbara would get 15 feet on that side,
Okay,
up to this point, and then Annie would get all 30 feet.
gotcha. Okay.
Can- Is that agreeable then? Is that,
Okay.
Is that agreeable?
Well, when they put it, what's gonna happen to my water line? Now, my water run from my house all the way down to Leicester Street.
They know how to get by your water.
They're obligated, the contractor that puts it in is obligated to make sure, you may have an interruption, say he hit the
Yeah,
thing or
yeah.
something like that, they've gotta fix it.
Yeah.
Okay? And we'll do the inspections, we'll be there to make sure it happens, but I really do wanna avoid a pump station. Whatever else we do, that's a bad scene, man.
Okay.
Okay?
So the agreement is that they're gonna vacate and give her the land for an easement.
In exchange for an easement farther away from her house if she chooses.
All right, look, they're gonna give her Power Street. That's gonna become her land. She owns Power Street. Then they're gonna run the sewer line toward Gerald's house more than where they running it now, away.
Mhm.
Wherever they can do it as far as they can, away from her house, I'm sure that's what we agree to.
Frankie will have to put in probably another manhole, but that's his problem. I mean, if we can work this out, then he gotta bear the cost of an extra, because if he comes out of this back corner, he may have to go like that and go over, but that's his cost.
Okay, so Ms. Jones would become her
Yep.
owner here in the property, and her house won't be on Power Street.
That's
right.
okay? And then everybody
That
else
would
will be,
fix that issue.
Please. And we're gonna abandon it, I guess, up to the end of Danny's property.
yeah,
Okay. And I think that'd be fine. I don't know where her property stops up here, it doesn't show, but
right,
wherever her property stops, we'll do it. But we haven't talked to any of the property owners on the other end of
right.
Powell Street. I think Miss Trent backs up to it and there's several others, so,
Trent,
up on the upper side.
Yeah.
She owns some lots back up in there.
Okay.
They back up to Powell Street. They also back up on East Street, but they run all the way back to Powell. So however far Andy's property comes up, we would abandon that section.
Okay, now, what type of easement are we talking about? What
It's a
size?
20-foot sewer easement,
Okay.
strictly for sewer. And if you wanna make it only for sewer, let's clarify now that it's not for electric lines, it ain't for water lines, it's not for any other purpose except that purpose. And
Okay,
it'll only allow the town, if we need to maintain it, to go in there. And we're supposed to cut the grass once or twice a year. But here's the problem, going too far away. That's some big trees in there.
we're gonna have to work our way around them or get rid of them.
Okay.
One or the other.
Uh-huh. There's a lot of trees that'll have to get tore down if we get over in these woods right here. There's no trees in Powell Street that I can tell. There may be a bush or hedges or something like that very well in there. But this is pretty big timber right here.
Right.
So you, but the town is gonna take care of that, the timber, right? If it needs
We
to
cut
be.
it down.
Yeah.
All right, so now look, we will go to town council meeting,
Yes.
and we need to have this in writing now.
Sure, absolutely,
Yeah.
100%.
And now that's prior to the meeting, we gotta get back together and look at this document that we're gonna present, and that we're all gonna be on the same accord. So we don't have to get in there, saying this and saying that, we can be quiet, you present the thing, and,
The town may be required to do the clearing of the right of way, so that is an added expense for Frank, but to solve this thing, we can get the stump dug up and move on.
okay,
And if there's enough value to the wood, and I don't know if that wood's gonna bring any money,
forget
but,
that, forget
Okay.
that,
and we'll get it all out of there.
forget that. Okay, oh, look, it's just one thing I wanna say, ma'am, I will not question that.
No, you're fine. I understand because it took me a while
Okay.
to even
No,
wrap
it's
my
just-
head
I'm
around
here
it.
early today, so, thank
All
you.
right, bro.
No.
All right, Philip, do we need a motion to
Chelsea to
support?
draw up an agreement with all the
Yeah,
points
yes.
on it,
I make a motion that Chelsea draw up an agreement with all the points on it,
satisfactory to both parties.
satisfactory to both parties,
And presented before the next town
and
council.
present it before the next town council meeting.
All right,
Now,
second.
what
I
I
second.
would suggest is this though, somebody from this meeting need to go out there with whoever gonna do some work, and when we talk about how far now, away from Power Street, let's make sure that we're making some sense here, not just
Oh,
go up to the council and say, we're gonna do
We're
something.
gonna have to get these
Looked at-
engineers to come back and shoot the grade to make sure that all.
Can we do that and have that as part of the agreement for council, so everybody's
I don't think by the next council meeting, it may drag it out into April, and I don't think time is of the essence. We can take another month to do this. But I think you need to, if we're gonna move that sewer line, let's make sure Maxie Hines doesn't come back and say, well, hell, there's
Yeah.
a creek in there that we can't do.
That's what I'm talking about, that we need to go take a look and make sure that we can kinda, do whatever we say we're trying to do.
I'll get Maxie Hines and Frankie and them done with it.
Make sense?
Yeah, because we probably need to,
All right, see you baseball season.
Agree to by everybody before they're.
I don't know your name.
I'm Bridget.
All All right, there's a motion on the floor, been seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passed.
Listen, what's this water and sewer treatment capacity?
I'm not sure if that's, what's the wastewater treatment capacity? Is that
What's that?
regarding what we just had a meeting with?
And I wanted to brief you guys, I talked to you,
Yeah.
Mr. Miller, a little bit on the phone, but I haven't talked to you that one day. But I promised, because it wasn't a committee meeting, if you remember, and I had asked both of you guys to, Tom was gracious enough to put together a meeting with the Adjutant General, what do they call him, MG?
Major General.
Major General. He's the head of the National Guard in Virginia. A great help to the town. He really helped us with the airport and several other projects. The biggest part of the discussion was he's very bullish on Pickett and new activities going out there, additional training opportunities, a lot of things that they'd like to do at the airport, new tower, new capital projects and all that. But the reason I really wanted to speak to him is the mayor has sent a letter to, it may have even been Preston Scott, who was a successor to Mr. Wilkinson as the post commander, who's now gone. It's Colonel Gravely who is the post commander. But there was a letter sent asking for 400,000 gallons of sewer capacity at the wastewater plant. Right now, we have a 2 million gallon a day plant, okay, of which the town is using 425. Once Fast C's up and going, we're going to be 455. So we're right at almost capacity. Now, it's an artificial capacity because it's really 2 million gallons over there, and the post is not using much. They're only using a couple 100,000 gallons a day. Okay, so we asked out of their 1.5 million if we could have 400,000 for the town's purposes. In exchange, the town offered to waive tap fees on post, and they're painful. You may have dealt with them, but our tap fee structure really favors in-town development and doesn't favor out-of-town development all that much. For example, a 2-inch tap. Okay, if you remember, there was much ado in the paper about tap fees with Fast C. Remember all that? A 2-inch tap, and they had just, yard hydrants on 2-inch lines. The water tap was $6,400. Excuse me, $12,800, yeah, for just hooking on a hydrant. That's why we went back and said, you got to redesign this thing and cut those things out. It is my recommendation at this point, I don't know anything, if they're going to make a proposal any different, but I think that the best thing to do would be to allow that transaction to happen. If the post is agreeable to that, this is not us paying them. It's just unrealized future revenue from our best customer. They are our best customer, okay? If you look at the amount of flow, they're by far our largest customer, and there was some question about how much do we charge for sewer, okay? And if you look at the rates Jennifer Hardy came up with, we charge Fort Pickett, because they got a big bulk rate, $3.87 per 1,000 gallons of flow, okay? An in-town customer pays over $7 per 1,000 gallons. So they're already literally half of an in-town customer. So post commander looked back, general looked at him and said, let's wrap this up by August 1st. So when I got back to my office, there is a notice to meet with the post Negri. There's a Colonel Negri, I think, and he already sent me a notice. Let's get started on this. So I think it's going to work. And the general, hopefully he was fully briefed on it, said, I'm pretty supportive of the concept. I don't see a big problem here. So that would be a huge positive for the town, that we wouldn't have to make capital improvements to the plant if we ever have these hotels and all these other things happening. In the interim, if you remember, the Tobacco Commission granted to the county $180,000 for us to do some upgrades to the wastewater plant now. That'll get us about 200,000 gallons of additional flow. That should solve immediate problems if we have a question with Nottoway Commons or any of these other activities. I think we're okay there. All right. Hey, Sheila.
Hey, how y'all doing?
What's going on? That is where we're at on wastewater treatment capacities. Good meeting, positive, and that was really the big meat of it. Okay. Item number 3, North Main Street. We've got some folks here that have some, I guess, representing some of your family or friends. But if you guys remember, I had discussed with council the possibility of extending water lines on North Main, I guess when you get in the county, it's called Cox Road, okay? Running that at a minimum to the main gate entrance at Pickett, okay? Where you would make that right-hand turn going back to the main gate. I've had several requests. Frankie Williamson owns property up there. He owns a shop. Wilburn's Country Store is really what motivated some of that discussion. And Wilburn's would like to be on potable water instead of a well, all that sort of thing. I did have a visit from some of the residents up there, and it was Berthel. What's her last name?
Berthel,
Is she hot?
no,
Epps.
Epps.
Epps. Berthel Epps. And they asked if the town would be interested in running this water line. Yeah, I'm interested in it. But man, it's outside town limits. And here's what I would like for council to consider and the committee to consider. What we need to do is have, because if we run a water line out there and there's not anybody connected to it except Berthel Epps, it's not gonna be very good water, okay? You've gotta move that water, and that would be a dead-end line. So we've got to have.
Are there no hydrants out there now?
The last hydrant is at LV Harris's shop, or old shop, the roofing place up there. Where the welcome sign is, that's the last where the water terminates in the town. Basically the town limits. It's an easy project. I expect it would be about $400,000 to get the water line up there, but we gotta have users. No users, and the water's not gonna be very good.
How many families are we talking about?
How many home residences do you think are up there?
The Moose Lodge and, the funeral home and Wilbur Store, and how many houses along
There's
there?
probably one, two, three, there's only about five after
Yeah, five.
Wilbur's.
Okay, 5 or 6 residential. I think Clara Hawks lives up there.
Yeah.
And,
And Palmer,
yeah.
Harold Palmer, and,
I think Lonnie Morgan's people have a place across the road where Mr. Derry's place was, and I think there's enough customers to make the water move.
So we haven't talked to anybody out there other than the people that
Other than
have.
Berthel, Frankie Williamson, the Wilburn store, they were real keenly interested.
What about McMillan?
I have not talked to Joe, but I have talked to Ronnie Williams, who owns the vacant building that was built on the left-hand side just before you go over the bridge. And he's got a bad well. He's got a half a gallon amount of well. And if you notice, when they were working on the bridge, they actually had porta-johns out there to do that. Okay? So we're gonna continue looking for funding sources, but at the same time, if we do this, I think we gotta consider requesting the county to mandate connection. That may not be very popular, because it's not gonna be unanimous that everybody wants to be on the county water system. But in order to make the water line work and have potable water that tastes okay and isn't cloudy, you gotta move the water. It just can't sit stagnant at the end of the line. And Berthel would be the last house, so she'd be the one looking at the end of the line right there.
So would those families that you got out there now, would that adequate, if they were to hook up to it, would that adequately move the water?
I think so. I think you get enough. But I think we still have to flush on a regular basis. Because that water, if we had the funeral home and Wilburns and everybody else in the interim coming on there, I think they'd be pulling water as well. But I think because it's a dead end line, we would still be flushing on a regular basis. And the only reason I'm not proposing to go across the bridge and the railroad is cost right now. It would be very expensive to go across that railroad track. We're boring under on the railroad. Okay? I'm not asking you for a definitive right now, but I am asking you to understand the machinations that if the county people call you and say, what's Phil up to? We need to find, because they're in the county. In town, it's mandatory to connect. In the county, it's not mandatory to connect, and we gotta have connections. Otherwise, you're gonna have a big poopy water. It's not gonna be good. All right? There's a briefing. I told Berthel she could watch this on video, so she may be doing that tomorrow. But, that's where we're at on it. And there is some interest from the property owners. Maybe the thing to do would put together a little survey, if that would be agreeable with you guys. And let the county know too, because they're residents. But put out a survey, would you be interested in connecting onto the town's water system? And that'll give us numbers instead of me projecting or. Just 4 or 5 units in the trailer park. Eagles Lodge?
yeah.
Maybe a reasonable cost for them, maybe.
I know it's trying to make a buck.
Veterinary.
Oh, do you? Okay. Yeah. What else is over there?
The veterinary clinic.
I'm done.
Meeting at.
You okay? Cut this off.